Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Marianne, Kathryn, and Tom from UK Coaching. And we're going to explore a little bit about choice and how you maybe can dial up the choice when you're coaching children. Um, One of the things we were just talking about before we hit record was about the small things you can do that can then go on to make a big difference within your practice, your activity. Uh, Marianne, from your experiences, where have you done that? Where you've been able to really emphasize what choice looks like for children?
I'm going to actually pick up on that small things that can make a big difference, because I think to start with, if children aren't used to being given a choice and you just give them a whole choice, they're like the vultures in the Jungle Book going, oh, I don't know what I want to do. What do you want to do? Kind of thing. So can we constrain the choice so that it keeps it fresh and easy for them initially? And actually it's just opening that little box and giving them a space. And it might just be in a particular place. So in a warm up or in the middle of a session they have somewhere, or it might be that you choose a couple of different versions of an activity. And quite often, if they're different difficulties, which we call self-pacing, different difficulties, and then ask them to choose that and then choose when they move on, you get a double whammy, because then they're starting to have to think about why they're choosing that level, when they're going to move on, why they're going to move on to the next one. And suddenly you've got the children actually paying attention to their own performance as well as the motivation from having a choice. And you start to end up with this, it expands out into more than a double whammy. It's properly really changes the way in which they interact, and the way in which they interact with their environment and their own understanding, their own performance as well. So they're not waiting for you as a coach to tell them something. They have to pay attention to something if they need to make a decision. So yeah, I think that's a really nice place to start. But to keep it so that it's not too much choice straight away, and then build that out. And once they get used to having choices, you'll find they'll come in and they'll ask. And you've ended up with one little thing that makes a huge difference. The other difference it makes is that as a coach, you also need to pay attention to what they choose and why and when they change. So you as a coach start to learn a lot more, and you as a coach start to change what you're picking up from your children.
Marianne, you just said something there that I think is really important around it changes the role of the coach. You're not necessarily the person making a judgment on if this is good or bad or right or wrong. Actually, you're dialing up your noticing skills, and you're sharing back some stuff with the children that helps them regulate the difficulty setting for themselves within the practice. Again, that spills into lots of other parts of people's lives. But you mentioned the warm up, and Kathryn, you were saying something before about warm ups and some of the things that you're doing where you can almost lead the children along and give them choice, but theme it in a way that makes it really exciting for them.
Yeah, and so I feel that sometimes children, especially when either when I start working with a group, or they may be quite new to the group, they might be not new to the sport, that they feel that they need to either know a little bit more about the sport or a little bit more about the environment that they're in. There's something that's not quite sure. I generally find and notice with my participants. So I'll try and say, right, I work in gymnastics. I might say, right, gymnasts, we're going to do a warm up where we really need to focus on warming our legs up. So we do lots of running and jumping activities. So I want you guys to tell me some ideas of what you think we could do within our game. But because sometimes it might go a little bit dry, they're not quite sure what to say, I might give them a list of 10 things, and then they can choose on that big list. They might choose 3 or 4 of the activities. Or we could mix it up each time. So I could say, right, so gymnast A, you choose the first activity from the list we're all going to do. Gymnast B, right, you can now take the lead and you choose the next one. So the choice is limited to the list, but it's also still getting them involved in choosing what they are doing. And they do really seem to enjoy that. Sessions then can evolve from even using that list, so they've now got that little back of knowledge, and say, right, we're going to play this game. We're going to who would like to choose the activity to start us off. And so they already got that knowledge and they don't need the list of ideas. They've got their ideas as well. They even like to go, right, I'd like to choose this person now to take the lead from me. So they can now do that as well. And to a point where I can almost stand and be the supervisor of the session. This happens with any age of children from 7, 10. Like they enjoy it at all ages as well. So obviously I adapt and think about their age and their ability as well to go with that and their experience. So not necessarily focusing on age, more their experience and their ability.
I wish we'd had this conversation a few years ago, right? Because I've made that mistake before of saying to a group of children in a football practice, what do you want to do tonight? And then a million different answers, some helpful, some not so helpful, come in. And as a coach, you're almost tripping yourself up because you're not going to satisfy all of those different answers, perhaps within the practice. But by having a menu or some things that the children can choose from, so there's choice with some boundaries and with some structure, definitely helps guide them along that way. And especially, as you were saying, Kathryn, when some of the children might not have a huge amount of experience in the sport, they need some help with the choices they're going to make. But the whole spirit of giving them lots of autonomy or more autonomy within the activity, that's got to help with confidence and self-awareness just as much as tactical development.
Yeah, and it does, especially when I've got a mix of abilities of experience and not experience. Somebody could be on their first or second session and not know a whole heap of information yet, but some might have been there for weeks and even months within the club. So some might feel nervous, some might not because they've already got all this knowledge. But if everyone's choosing from the same pool of information, everyone's choosing from that same list, everyone's on the same playing field, and it makes the confidence level of almost everybody in the session at the same as well. So I find that really quite beneficial to do. Some might not feel confident to choose something, but actually if they're all choosing from the same list, then that brings that confidence level up.
And maybe there's parts of the practice or the activity where you're able to dial up or dial down the amounts of freedom that you're giving to children within the session. It could be the fact that you as a coach maybe want to be a little bit more certain about activity 1, but in activity 2, it's more free and there's more free play and there's more openness for the children to go and make decisions and self-regulate with peers or whatever it might be. And then actually you can take some nuggets of what they've learned from that part and use that to be rocket fuel for the final part of your activity. So I suppose it's not as simple as saying, I'm just offering choice. You could really think about the part of the practice where the choice or more choice is going to have more impact on the young people.
Yeah. And so I was sorry, it allowed my participants to create completely their own game. So I started off by saying, right, what's your favorite game that we play at warm-up time? And they chose noodle tag. So we've got a noodle that we have in the pool, but we use it with our session. They run out and they have to sort of tag their friends with a noodle. So we said, right, what do you want to do next? How can we make it a little bit different? And they decided to run around on it like a broomstick. And then they have to tag somebody between their legs. And it all of a sudden completely changed the dynamic. It made it harder for some, made it easier for others. And I was like, off you go and have a go. See if it works. It didn't work for some of the participants. It did work for others. They enjoyed it. They enjoyed just being a part of creating that game and making it fun.
So as I say, that dialing up and down the choice and having spaces like that it's not just the whole session, also allows you as a coach to learn and to get better and more comfortable with letting go a little bit, and for you to get a bit more comfortable with not being in control, but using that time to really pay attention to what the children are doing so that you're learning from them and that you're becoming much more skilled at picking up the information about what they do, what matters to them, what motivates them, how they move when they have got choice, what decisions they make when they have got choices. So it helps you as a coach, use that space as a coach, not only because you're giving them choice, but also it's a fantastic learning experience for you if you pay attention and reflect on what you're noticing when you do give that choice. And then you can dial it up and down to make it comfortable for you as well as useful for the children.
I feel really, really valuable in that as well, Marianne, in terms of recognizing that as a coach, if you're offering more choice to the children, then you've got to be okay with everything not going okay. Like, there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be times when it goes wrong, but that's life, isn't it? Like that you're preparing the young people for stuff that they're going to experience further down the road as well. So,
And it's learning.
learning, yeah, absolutely. We learn, don't we, from making mistakes and from building on them. So there's so much value in offering choice, whether that's in small doses or big doses, throughout all the different types of activity that you offer.
Yeah, I find asking them questions, any questions, all questions, just to get them involved in their session is so invaluable. I often ask the question, and I might answer it with another question, just challenge them, or just to help them. I might get them to ask questions with each other. So if they have a question for me, I'll encourage them to ask someone else the question first, so build that conversation within the group of participants. And then they can ask me if they're really stuck on something. Yeah, so that encourages the conversation.
With one more little bit to finish, actually, Tom. One of the things that's really fascinated me with the research around choice for people of all ages is that even small choices are in perception of feeling connected and cared for and being given a voice. So even choices like choosing the color of a piece of equipment are shown to vastly increase the perception of being connected and cared for and having autonomy. What order you might do something in. So choices that actually aren't really, are not like the big bits that we're talking about in front, but they're still really, really powerful. So small things around more choice, clothes they wear, colors of equipment, stuff that you might think is really innocuous from a skill acquisition perspective are still incredibly powerful on skillfulness and motivation.